Okay. All right. All right, Apostle.
All right. Well, it's good to be here. It's a beautiful area. We've got a beautiful scene.
So
it's kind of interesting that Apostle, we just opened up the 2025 year in a review, and I had forgotten about this incredible statement that Surpazon made last year, last March, was about a year ago, right? What was it? He set the vision for us that we are the
future of the church today.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that, today there's a lot of talk about Christ consciousness. We were talking about that
right
a few centuries ago, It's right now we're there. But most people don't know that that's what we were talking about. They get lost in all the
maybe even Armenians sometimes.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. They get lost in the hoopla.
I remember the first time I went to Armenia with you in 2014. That's what I saw everywhere in these old churches. At the top of the altar, there was usually always this symbol. And when I would ask you about it, I said, what is this? I always see the symbol above. And you said it was eh. And that was the moment that I had the aha moment where when I asked you what eh was or what did it mean, and I'll ask you to reiterate it, but I said, oh my goodness, that's really the contemporary conversation from Eckhart Tolle, from Ram Dass, who did a book called Be Here Now in the early 70s. I think that was the first time I became aware that contemporary spiritual conversations were speaking out about presence in a modern context. And of course, Oprah Winfrey making Eckhart Tolle popular, those are what all his books are about. So maybe you can kind of...
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll tell you why. Your interest in it really kind of made me realize that, I didn't come to this church in the usual manner. That means it's the verb to be, the present verb to be, is.
And it's the seventh letter of...
Seventh letter of the Armenian alphabet. Kind of interesting also because 7, of course, is a completeness. If traditionally you've thought of the sky as being 3, Trinity and everything, and the earth having 4 corners. So it's the 3 and 4, meaning complete perfection, 7. And that's why in the apocryphal, or not the apocryphal, in the what is that? In eschatology, what is that? Armageddon and all that.
Right.
Now, why is 666? Because if 7 is perfection, what's 1 off of perfection is going to be the 6, and so 666 kind of works nicely with that too, But anyway, the 7th letter of the Armenian alphabet, and I don't think that it's by chance, because when they came up with the Armenian alphabet, 5th century, it's the 7th letter. If you look at it, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, it follows, the first few letters follow the Greek, abba, gada. But then you get to the 7th letter, and you've got this eh. It was the verb to be. He is. It is. And
can you? So if it's the verb to be, denoting an action of presence, is it also a noun to be?
Yeah. Well, it then becomes the name of God, right? I am. He is. But it has to be the verb because the idea is that it is right now. It's not it was. It's not will be. There's no future. There's no past. It's definitely right now. And that's really important. God is, or Christ, a lot of times people talk about Christ in terms of this Jesus who was there 2,000 years ago. And if you study more and more about what the Armenians are saying, it's beyond. Jesus was
Right.
the incarnation right there, right? But it was like, we're talking about, if you want to go by scientific things, with 13 billion years ago, or if you want to
Right.
talk about like the early times when civilization was just coming to be, the Christ consciousness is there. Christ is
Right.
is there wherever you.
Eternal.
It is,
Right.
yes, he is. It's that moment right now.
And if I remember too from your sermon last weekend and kind of in preparation for Easter, and of course the idea of Easter, and help me through with this theologically, it's a rebirth, a resurrection phenomenon. Of course, there's also another layer to this, interpreted in many ways, about, you mentioned Armageddon as a precursor to it, as a prophetic event. And I remember you mentioning something, it's funny how all these coalesce, about it's always now. It's not about preparing for one, it's
Right.
about an embodiment in the now. And you had made some reference to the Christ teaching as it was spoken of.
Well, a lot of people want to look for some event happening, and then Jesus says, he says, the kingdom of heaven is right now. It's happening right now. It's in your midst. It's in your midst.
The
It's
kingdom of
not-
heaven
the kingdom of
right.
God.
Right.
That's the consciousness.
Right.
Christ is there. It's right now.
accessible.
It's accessible at that moment. It's not some future thing.
Right.
And he says people are going to say, there it is, or no.
You don't have
He
to
said,
die to get there.
Yeah, you don't have to die.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't have to die. And what I find so many times, especially unfortunately in American Christianity, there's this quest to find out the dates and times and everything.
Right.
And what happens, I understand, Jesus says, it's not for you to know. But why does he say that? Because you're wasting your life. Christianity is about living. It's not about, worrying about tomorrow. Right now, we're sitting right here. I mean, if this tree falls on us right now, it's over, right?
Right.
Okay, so I figured out that, hey, in 10 years, this is going to come to an end. Okay, for me, it came to an end right now, And so I've missed out on life because I'm
Right.
consumed with some future event. Or I've missed out on life because I've beaten myself up on what happened in the past, making mistakes and everything. And that whole idea of forgiveness plays into that too, because, okay, the past, there's nothing you can do to change that right now. There's
Right.
nothing I can do about tomorrow,
Right.
right? I can make investments so I can make my money grow, but it means nothing if it ends right now.
Right.
Right now is the only thing you have. And that's why is so important. He is, right now. And it's immediate. And that's what I was saying. I feel sometimes people have looked at me and they've said, like, well, you didn't go to when I went to seminary, it was during the Soviet years. So I went to a seminary in Armenia in an atheistic country. So obviously they weren't teaching you God stuff. But I went there to learn the language, to absorb. And I feel like I learned more because everything we're teaching right now is right on track with everybody who came before us. The great theologians of Orthodoxy. And I feel like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't study that. But it syncs. It's exactly in line with everything. And I listen to some of these people, they talk about, well, the Orthodox traditions, the Coptics and the Greeks did this and the Russians. You lost it. You lost it the minute you put some ethnicity to it.
Right.
And that's what we need to be careful of, not to label this as Armenian. I only label it as a historical fact. If you want to find this message, you're going to find it in the Armenian tradition. but the people
right.
happen to be there. We're there,
Well, it was brought to my attention. I think it was Reclaim 2024 with the presentation by the two young gentlemen.
Terpensions, yeah.
Yeah, where they gave us a historical walkthrough and spoke about the Council of Nicaea and as a turning point moment in Christianity and how it's instituted on a national level, and how the Armenian priests refused to modify the structure.
Chalcedon, yes.
And they got essentially exiled for that. I don't know the theological
anathematized. Anathematized.
That's it. And so what I realized was, as the monastic tradition, what was, from I learned this time, because this reclaim was about reclaiming. This reclaim at Apostles' Reclaim event was reclaiming monasticism.
Right.
And what we learned there was that the monastic priests essentially were preserving this treasure in its original form. It's why we often refer to apostles as the OG Christian expression. And I thought that was really cool, because you have all these invasions, you all have all these kind of attackings that can occur to a nation through 2,000 years. But what this monastic system did is, at all costs, they preserved the original form, unaltered by Roman states or any other, maybe, which we often hear today, it's maybe corrupted to manipulate a nation or a people,
right.
Control. And I always found it interesting that, why is that there? Just to go back to, for example, if it's a key, if the messaging is, and all these contemporary spiritual teachers are referring to presence as the doorway to something, I just find it fascinating that the Armenian Church, as a preservation of a treasure for humanity, it's also kind of ironic that it happened at Ararat, which ties into this ancient biblical story.
Yeah.
What is it that got to be right above the altar? And I guess that's part of that original.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you and that's where you need to go to the history. You look at the Armenians, never having any access to peace. It's always being invaded, barbarians raping and pillaging the land, the people, and everything. So what message would you put at the top of that church? You want people to have hope. What's the only message you can put? It is. That's it. Don't look back. Don't look forward. Right now. Presence. Right now. That's what's important. For people who don't have the luxury, and I've shared this in the past, when the head of the Indian Orthodox Church, they're Catholicos, I met him, and he had this opportunity to introduce me to his people, and I was just floored. I didn't realize he was going to make such a big deal. We had given him we are in communion with the Indian Church.
Indian?
Indian, yeah. St. Thomas went to India. And there's, it's a minority, the Christians in India, very big minority. But when you have 1.5 billion people in India, if you have 1 million people that are Indian Orthodox, by their scales, it's a minority. For us,
I don't think I've ever thought about an Armenian or Orthodox Christian. Were they Armenian Orthodox Christian or just Orthodox?
No, Orthodox, and we're in communion with them. We're the same. We've both rejected the Council of Chalcedon, and in fact, in 2018, they invited me to be the speaker at their youth gathering in the Poconos. So I got a chance to go to the Poconos. And there was maybe about 700 people there at this gathering.
Wow.
But before that, when I was serving in Cupertino, there was an Indian Orthodox community there. And they asked if they could use our church for services because we are the same lineage. And I said, of course you can. So they would come to church at noon when we would finish, and they would use it in the afternoon and celebrate their liturgy. And so when they built their church, about a year later, they invited their Catholicos who came from India.
Interesting.
And naturally, they wanted to say thank you. And they invited me to go to their liturgy. And I went, and I sat in the very far back. It was a massive, I just remember all these, just maybe several hundred people. And, kind of got into the back. And when they noticed that I was there, they invited me to go up right to meet him. And, I wasn't expecting anything, but I went and I said, gave my greeting. I kissed his hand as one of the, how I looked at it is our Catholicos was the successor of Thaddeus. Theirs is the successor of Thomas.
Can you explain that structure?
So there's apostolic. The real churches have apostolic roots. Our apostle was Thaddeus, and then 4 years later, Bartholomew.
Ours, meaning the Armenian people?
Yeah.
Thaddeus?
Thaddeus, yeah. And Jude Thaddeus was his name, and he was in Armenia in the year 41. And
wow.
41, not 1941,
right,
but 41.
But St. Gregory was there, obviously
300 years later. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
wow.
The apostolic,
okay.
Because it was underground. The church was underground until St. Gregory was delivered from the
So
pit.
we weren't a nation of Christians yet. That comes from St. Gregory, but Thaddeus actually makes it to Armenia.
And he gets killed over there too.
Oh.
He's martyred in Armenia for bringing Christianity there. But in the meantime, while he's there, he establishes the Armenian Church, the Apostolic Church. In the same way, Thomas went to India and established
I didn't know this.
there. And so he was killed,
Also?
Yeah, they were all martyred. I'm not sure the story of Thomas. And I know he was martyred somewhere. I don't know if it was in India. But he made it there, and he established the church. So think about it. And Peter went to Rome, established the Roman Church.
Right.
So when you look at someone like Pope Leo, Catholicos Karekin, these are basically 2,000 years ago. Their predecessors were brothers in Christ.
Right.
Now they're meeting again 2,000 years later. Right.
Right.
So anyway, back to this scene in Cupertino. They invited me to come to their church opening. And he invited me to come sit right next to him. And I don't know what to say.
He's the Catholicos of India.
Of the Indian church, yeah. And I'm sitting there in their brand new church. He's ready to consecrate it. And I go say hello to him, and he says, please sit next to me. And then he turned to his people, and he says, I want you to know who this man is. And then he took off his Catholicos ring. The big ring with the stone and everything. He took it off and he handed it to me, and he said, can you read what's inside of it? The inscription. And in it said, to my brother in Christ. It was written in Armenian.
Wow.
To my brother in Christ from Catholicos Vazken, the Catholicos of that time. And I don't know why he's got this Armenian ring on it. And so I read it, and I gave it back to him, and he said, I want you to know, to his people, this man represents the Armenian Church, who has never known Christianity in peace. He says, we have only known in peace. The Maharajas, all the elite class in India all respected the Christian church until today. We have never known Christianity with suffering. These people, pointing to me, have never known Christianity without suffering. And then he turns to his people, he says, these are the people who have the true faith, who have the true understanding, I think he said. And I never forget that, because, yeah, he was pointing to me, and it kind of like set me in what my goal had to be. All the stories of genocide, everything, we have to funnel that in and realize that we have a place in the world to present Christianity with suffering. And so just yesterday when I was at Palm Sunday, I made that point. You know, we had a King's protest over here. Well, the original No King's protest.
Right.
The original Palm Sunday was a protest against the state. Jesus shows up, but he goes all the way. He dies on a cross. That's the suffering. That's why in Armenian, our symbol of love is not, you know, the little fat angel or the harp
cherub,
and the cherub. You know, our symbol of love is the cross, sacrifice. And so you can't go to a No King's protest and then, you know, sit in your Tesla and go home. You know, no, it doesn't end at 4:00. Your struggle is always, if you're committed to No Kings, no more wars, no more dropping bombs on people, that's your constant protest. It's not 4:00, I got to get home to dinner, you know. It's like that's what the difference is, why Jesus's revolution continues today.
Right.
And why others don't.
Well, it's amazing to speak of Jesus as a revolutionary. It's actually a thought I had this morning, and it's one that also correlates. I often see these threads between, you know, the Shaolin Buddhist monastery and the Christ monastery, because they were also warriors of peace. And you know, it's hard sometimes for people to recognize being a revolutionary. And there's two thoughts and questions I had for you. One is how to speak about being a revolutionary. I think it's important in this time, and I think I feel, as many do, we're in a tipping point in humanity, and awareness towards being a heart-centered, clear-minded revolutionary, which is how I perceive, you know, Jesus-type practices. Those who follow the message or the dream, I could say, of what Christ spoke about. How do you see being a revolutionary as a Christ-conscious person? And the other question I have is if you can help clarify how the cross, this moment of extraordinary torture, it can be perceived as a symbol in one where the torture isn't celebrated, right? Because if someone doesn't understand the symbolism,
Right.
because you said it's an ultimate form of sacrifice, and it's ironic because the timing of where we are right now, and you know, Easter about to come upon us. I'm curious if you can tie in these.
The full moon is tonight.
Right, the full moon.
Yeah, to the full moon, because Easter is calculated on that full moon, the date of Easter.
Then a third question, can you explain the cosmological timing? I might be asking too much. How does if Easter is oriented around the full moon, and we're looking at Christ consciousness, we're looking at revolution, heart-centered revolutionaries, and we're looking at the ultimate sacrifice. It's kind of
Well, the revolution is our uneasiness with evil, with injustice. That's why you have a revolution. If everything was peaceful right now, you wouldn't have a revolution. But the absurdity of solving problems by violence. Anybody, I mean, the young child understands that, if he punches his friend, that friend's going to punch him back,
Right.
So that's why as a kid, right, when we're in the playground, you don't punch somebody who's bigger than you,
Right.
because you know that there's going to be retaliation, But we don't figure that out. We go on, we build our lives, and unfortunately, these people that are promoting war, for them, human life is dispensable.
Right.
And so we drop a bomb on Iran, and we mourn that 6 American servicemen have died. That's tragic, man. What did you expect? That they weren't going to shoot back? But those 6 men, horrible. But what about the hundreds, thousands, children, innocent people that are being killed over there? That's the absurdity. The absurdity is we have rules for war. We call it war criminal.
Right.
As if war itself is not a criminal.
Right. Right.
So if you do something, if you rape somebody while you're invading that country, that you're a war crime. That's a war crime.
Right.
The whole war is a crime.
Right.
Killing some other people that you don't know is a crime.
Right.
We justify war by saying, oh, well, they had it coming to them. He punched me, I'm going to punch him back. That's justified, okay, but we always look at things like that. But how do you explain just dropping bombs on people?
Right. Right.
And and they do this in the name of Christ. To which I always ask, okay, remember a few years ago, what would Jesus do?
Right.
I always, who would Jesus bomb? Would he
Yeah.
drop a bomb on Iranians because they're not American?
I heard the Pope a day or two ago, because what's his name, whatever, the chief of the War Department, made a comment like, "We're going to pray the bomb," and the Pope said, "God doesn't listen to prayers that are scripted with bombing people." Something, I don't remember the quote.
Right. He's absolutely right.
But that was
but that's what I refer to as absurdity. The absurdity. And unfortunately, this kind of language comes from Old Testament. And we hear it. God, we prayed to God that that these people, the Egyptians, wouldn't cross the sea. So God opens it up and we go through, but the Egyptians, they all drown. Really? Like we didn't like these guys, or like the Philistines, whoever they are, like he smote the Philistines. Who are these people? You can't develop a language of love within the language of a war, of hatred.
Of hate, right.
And that's all we keep doing. Even the most primitive stories that we have, like Noah's Ark, which we love because the Ark comes to Ararat. I love it too, it landed on Ararat. But what a story,
Right.
that there's everybody in the world was horrible, and God decides this man and his family should be saved. Not the God that I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the God that I believe in, You mean the little baby that was born yesterday just deserved to be killed? I don't know. Just doesn't make sense.
Right.
There is a story about Noah's Ark that doesn't get told. And that is that, hey, there's consequences to evil. Let's present it that way. There's consequences to doing bad things. God might get you later on. But the idea that these are literal fact, that God decides, let's wipe out the whole humanity.
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to send a little dove and put the rainbow is caused because of the diffraction of light, right? Not because God's saying, I'm never going to do this again. It's like, but they teach us this.
Right.
And it goes in, and so people from the outside who weren't brought up in this tradition, they go, this is ridiculous. because this is what we focus on.
Right. It becomes a memorization of ideological principles shaped by people's traumas and fears and the way they, and that allows interpretation, versus if you just simply looked at it, almost as you were saying, more scientifically, where the refractions of light, cause and effect, which I guess would be the Indian term from that, since you referred to the Christian Indians, is karma. And you can see this balance of judiciation through cause and effect on a much more pure level that's not relevant to
and the thing is, we
ethnicities
need to be able to sift through. Like, for instance, in the Old Testament, that there's two stories of creation. There's the first story, which happens in 7 days, and then there's another one where just God, says, here's a man, and we're going to take his rib out. There's people that believe that women have, or men have, one less rib than women. There's people who take this seriously.
Literally.
Right. And so we need to sift through that. Like, for me, the story of Let There Be Light is the first day of creation is fantastic. Because isn't that what happens? Isn't that a Big Bang story? Let there be light.
Right.
There's no sun, there's no moon, or let there be light. Boom.
So it's really a way to communicate a principle
Yes.
that's timeless, that in 2,000 years, if you know how to read it, you don't get lost in the context, because in each time frame, words can mean different things. So you have to read it in a more, I don't know if the word's metaphorical, but our archetypal extraction of the deeper meaning.
The other day, somebody said there was an investment opportunity. He was talking about these coins. What do they call Bitcoins or something? And he said, well, I had this fund that I had set up, but I went to Bitcoin, and he said, I bit the bullet, and I bought those. Okay, that's an idiom. That makes sense in our lives.
Bit the bullet. Right.
2,000 years from now, someone's going to think these people are absurd. He put a bullet in his mouth and he bit it.
Right.
That's not what it means.
That's an excellent. Thank you for.
It means that
exactly.
I forgot about what I was, and I took the risk.
Right.
That's what it means.
Right.
It doesn't mean I chewed on a bullet.
Perfect example of it. Yeah.
Okay. So.
Right.
So it's a matter of what time you're speaking in.
Right.
And Jesus spoke at the times. He
Right.
spoke to those people. And they were an agrarian society, people who understood earth. And he said a grain of wheat has to fall into the earth and die so that it could produce a harvest, produce more grains. Those people understood it. We don't understand that because we don't plant stuff.
Right.
But that guy understands that seed has to die for it to come up, and then I have to sacrifice. I have to give my life if I want to see you.
So now tie in the cross symbolism, the sacrifice. Can you give clarity to the same misleading approach that people can have when they misread the symbolism, whether it's in words or visual?
Well, the cross is in front of Jesus, and he has an opportunity to say no. If he didn't have an opportunity to say no.
And how does he have that opportunity? If he denounces himself, they won't crucify him? Or?
Well, no, it says it right there, right? Pilate sends to him, he says, don't you understand, I have your fate is in my hand?
Right.
Right. Are you the king? He says, all Jesus needed to do at that point is say, yeah, this has gone a little bit too far.
Right.
And it's off, Right. That's how he would have done it.
Right.
Okay? He could have just said, guys, we've gone a little bit too far. Let's go. And, there's a Greek author, the guy who wrote Zorba the Greek, Kazantzakis. He made a really there's a wonderful book. It's called The Last Temptation of Christ. And he's on the cross, and the tempter comes up to him and says, look, let me show you what your life could have been. And he shows them, look, I'm going to show you something. If you come off the cross, you could marry Mary Magdalene. You could have children, grandchildren. Peter will come to you when you're in your old age, and you'll talk about the old days of when you had the revolution. And Jesus, knowing that he could have had a regular life, opts for the cross. That's what sacrifice is. While knowing that I could have an easier life, I'm sacrificing for the common good.
Staying true.
Staying true. And so he goes on the cross and realizes if he sacrificed, he sets an example for all of us to sacrifice for one another, for us to give of ourselves. That's what I meant by that's the symbol of love. Like, I could say all I want, that I love you, and
right.
We can have warm and feelings.
Right.
But when somebody comes up and says, hey, this guy Greg that you're hanging out with is just this horrible man, denounce him now, otherwise you will see, yourself get things.
Right.
The love is, go ahead, do it to me, because I'm not denouncing this man. I love this man, that kind of love. And I think that throughout Armenian history, that's what we saw.
Right.
If you want, denounce. Become a Turk, become a Muslim, go this way, everything will be fine.
Right, because they were saying, renounce your Christianity, transform, or whatever the word is, or become Muslim, or whatever the cultural at that time was demanding, because they wanted a
there is
ethnic, or...
There is a book written in 1922, I believe, by a guy named Teotic, and it's called the Armenian Clergy at the Cross or something, and it's 1,200 plus clergymen, Armenian priests, that were killed during the genocide, and it's their small little brief stories.
Wow. How
they were killed. There was one that always sticks in my mind. It's Father Vazken. He's taken, I think it was in Sepastia, one of the cities in ancient Armenia, or in Western Armenia, I should say. And they drag him out in the courtyard. All of the people are watching him and everything. Denounce your Christian faith. And he doesn't. And they flay him in front of everybody.
Wow.
They take his skin off, right. In front of everybody, in front of the kids and everything. Like, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't denounce your Christianity.
Right.
And that guy could have said, yeah, okay, guys, this is a little bit too much.
Right.
A little bit more than I want to handle at this point, right? But they don't. That's the amazing thing. That's what keeps it. And that's what that Indian bishop was telling his people. Like, you guys don't get it. These people have sacrificed. We don't sacrifice. The Maharajas love us.
Right.
And, we're in India, they have class system.
Right, caste, right.
Caste, right? So we've always been in the top caste,
Right.
That's where the Christian.
And
so we've never experienced Christianity. That's what he said.
That's very profound.
He said, listen to this. And that's when I got that was a turning point in my life, because I realized I have a mission. Our mission is to talk the cross, talk that there is sacrifice.
Right. And the grand finale, it's so perfect how we hit all the points, is the application right now, because the world is in a very tumultuous moment where if there was ever a time to embody, if people can universally say, we want a solution, we want peace, we want a world where, only a sick mind would prefer, destruction. Those seeking peace, those seeking solutions, those seeking an ascension from the crises, you could say, how do we embody, if we were to refer from the context of Christ consciousness, we've got meaning it's all about embodiment or embracing in the now. We see this sacrifice, meaning don't just have a great desire, I want peace in the world, but the minute you're afraid, here's money I'm going to support these because if I don't, maybe they'll get me mindset. You know, fear has been used excellently for the last 25 years to induce a population to go along with a lot of these atrocities. I think the death count right now for the last 20 plus years of our interactions in the Middle East is around 5 million. That's a huge number.
Huge.
As a consequence of the destabilization and interactions, the way we've interacted with Iraq and all these places.
And we're that's just middle. We have completely forgotten about what's going on in Africa, whether it's Congo, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Darfur. I mean, the genocide that's taking place over there, they say, is visible from space. That's how big it is. But, you know, they're black, so we just kind of like put them to one side. We don't want to deal with them.
Right.
We're not talking about that, man.
Black, brown, all this.
Yeah.
But if 6, people that we can relate to die, it's a massive issue. And so imagine if we are at this tipping point, which I think can be cumulatively agreed upon. In fact, it's, many analysts even speak to World War III is potentially activated. We've just seen the massacres of Gaza in a way that, some people seem to be waking up now. Some see it as a stepping point that's been happening. More leeway allowed each time from 9/11 till now. It's as if each year allowed a little bit more. And now we're at the point of this is where we're at when we haven't come to a place collectively as a nation to say enough is enough. We always stop short of that. If we hadn't, we wouldn't be here. And now I think people are coming to a realization that if we don't embody something now, what's next?
Right.
And you could say if fear, which has gotten us this far, because we wouldn't have agreed to all this, because it's our tax dollars, it's our votes, it's our mental perspective. Fear has shown us support these actions, otherwise, you and your family might suffer. And now we realize, look at the amount of suffering caused of that approach. So how does a person from this ancient treasure, wisdom preserved, that's really ready for the world today, this Christ consciousness, how do you see the language to empower people to not to act from fear, but to act from love, so that we can be part of a tipping point collectively where Christ consciousness becomes its expansion versus the way it's been going?
No, this is one of the reasons why I've done my ministry through the church. The church becomes that vehicle, because we can talk all we want about abstract ways, but you need solid ways of reaching people and loving. We can talk all you want about love and everything, but at some point you need to reach out to somebody and feed them. You need to give them consolation. You need to go to the prison and talk with them. You need to do the work. And this is what Jesus constantly is talking about. I'm giving you an example. Before he goes to the cross, he washes the feet of the disciples. And he says, do you get what I'm doing? He actually says that. He says,
he asks?
Yeah, he said, do you know what I'm doing here? He says, if you call me Lord and I'm kneeling and washing your dirty feet, what are you supposed to do to one another? If you're calling me Lord, thank you. But let me show you what I'm going to do, and now you do it to one another. And he says that. Do it to one another. What does he want us to do? To take care of one another. Reach out to one another. Support. Love each other. I think this is, and we need to put away some of the ridiculous things that keep us from loving. I think this is where John Lennon really hits it with Imagine, Imagine there's no religion.
Right.
It's easy if you try,
Right.
Nothing to kill or die for.
Right.
Brotherhood of man. Wow.
It's a powerful statement coming from a priest.
No, but imagine.
This is the Apostle Revolution.
Yeah, imagine that
Right.
we're not, I'm not killing you because
Right.
you don't believe in my God.
Right.
I'm not killing you at all.
Right.
And that's really the challenge. For me, it's always been God's not somebody that you're going to wind up on a Sunday morning. He's got to be every single day in your life, at night. Constantly. You're just there. You just happen to be at night when you go to sleep to forgive people who've hurt you. It's just a beautiful tradition to be able to help people because it's right to do. Not because I'm going to heaven,
Right.
but because it's right to help people,
Right.
to love. Nothing to kill or
And
die for.
that's maybe what you were speaking. That's beautiful. The truth, the sincerity with the self to say, am I acting out of fear or am I acting out of love or compassion? And essentially the modality of practice, of implementation, of embodiment is to...
The practice to me is the thing, because you can analyze all you want. What is the saying? Analysis is paralysis. You get paralyzed. Oh, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Just do it, Bon.
Right.
Just do it. Like he said, get down on your knees and wash each other's feet. Take
Right.
care of, And
Right.
this is how people will know. And it's interesting, Jesus says, he says, the way they will know that you are my children is by loving each other. Wow. It's not surgery. What is it? Brain surgery. It's reality.
And would then the grand finale to all this, and the timing is so auspicious because this Sunday is Easter, the resurrection, in alignment with how you helped us understand the story and it's bite the bullet. It's so tell us how knowing this and the resurrection as a date aligned to the full moon and its meaning, is it a Tell me what how that completes the story.
I think the full moon story is because the way they calculate Easter is the first Sunday after the full moon of after the start of spring. So spring started March 21st.
I see.
So it has to be in that period. Obviously, the first full moon, if it's on the 21st, will be on April 20th or April 18th. So there's like a window of dates that Easter can happen, and they calculate this based on that, when the full moon happens. And it's strategically in spring because there's new life starting. As far as, is it a metaphor? Is it a reality? That's something every person has to answer. That was one of the questions I remember early on in seminary years, If somebody discovered the bones of Jesus today, would that change your belief? And I've thought about that. Yeah, if they discovered that Jesus really didn't resurrect, they found the bones, there'd be many people who would say, I don't care, I don't believe it. I still believe. There'd be many people who would say, see, I told you so. And there's other people that it wouldn't matter to.
Right.
I think we got to drop. To me, I believe the resurrection happened. And there are people that I will never be able to convince. So be it. Just like, there's people, there's over 1 billion people on this planet who believe in reincarnation.
And
right. That's what they believe. It's not what I believe. Okay. Can we get along?
And whether one takes the literal or the figurative, what's the energetic profoundness of what this moment in terms of consciousness, when we say the rebirth and the practice and the ritual that is implemented around this moment of time, and when we think about the crisis in the world, am I reaching or am I spot on to go, it's almost like reclaim or awakening, the activation of Christ consciousness from death to life, that rebirth.
I think.
Am I going outside
No,
theologic boundaries?
No,
or?
because like what I'm saying is like you have to feel at peace with yourself, with how you're going to understand that in your life. At the end of the day, there's nobody who knows, and that's why Jesus says, he says, leave it to God, stay out of it,
Right.
What are you going to do if tomorrow the world ends? You're going to go to God and say, excuse me, by my calculations, you were off by a couple weeks. What?
And what is that ritual to someone who may not have a biblical reference? They haven't been raised in the church, but there is interest in Christ consciousness. There is interest in solving the world problems with these formulas. What is how does one understand the ritual of resurrection in a contemporary context?
You understand that resurrection is victory. That's all. It's victory over death.
Light over darkness?
Light over darkness, love over hate, good over evil. It's the goodness, That day, we call Friday Good Friday. Why?
This coming Friday.
Yeah, because they tortured and they killed our God.
Right.
What makes that good? What makes it good
right.
is the resurrection. It was a horrible day. It's the worst Friday.
It's ironic to be called Good Friday.
It was the worst Friday. But
right.
on Easter morning, when you look at that cross and you say, oh, there is life after this.
Right.
That's what makes it Good Friday. It makes it Great Friday.
So it's truly
it's through the lens of resurrection that becomes good.
And
so that's our life too.
Right.
If you believe it, and which I do, you believe it, then those difficulties, those crucifixions, I understand as opportunities to resurrect.
It's so that's the example of the transformation, or the one poetic way it's been said is from transforming poison to medicine, or where you use the Christ consciousness in this sense as a mobility, alchemy, to take something dark and make it light.
Make it light, yeah.
Something wounded and healed, essentially.
Yeah.
So you're seeing Good Friday is an example of that. Something horrific on Friday becomes a precursor, becomes seen as something good because it precursor to the resurrection.
Resurrection, right. It is the only way you can resurrect is to have a crucifixion. You can't get to resurrection.
Can you go so far as to say that's the silver lining of seeing the value in suffering then, when applied through a presence consciousness?
Absolutely. Your suffering is diminished in the sight of... It's like a baby, and Jesus uses this metaphor too. He says it's the woman who has... who goes through labor, right?
Right.
It's the worst pain, they tell me. I don't know. We're men.
Right.
But they tell us it's the horrible, right?
Right.
But once the baby comes...
Right. Pure joy.
Pure joy.
Right.
Okay, Friday is horrible.
And incredible peace on their face. You see it. It's an extraordinary...
Friday is horrible. But Sunday morning, you go and the grave is empty.
Right. Right.
It's peace. You said it just now.
Right.
Yeah. Those pains are all finished. Evil has been conquered. And that's what I live with. That gives us hope.
Right.
That gives me my faith, my hope, and the medicine is love.
And an actionable protocol. That's what's really cool. It's not separate. It's an actionable protocol. I love it.
I like that.
Amazing.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Always. Thank you.
We got to do this again sometime.
Yeah.